Welcome to Digital Dialogues. Today I have my guest, Nick Queensland, the Director of Facilities with Luminis Health. Nick, how are you?
I'm doing great today, Stephen. Thanks for having me. I appreciate this.
Hey, the pleasure is all mine. So, of course, I am Steve Marion, the host of Digital Dialogues. Nick, let's get right into it. Tell me a little bit about where you're from. Where'd you get your start?
So I'm from a small town in southern Minnesota. I grew up in a town of about 1,000 people, no stoplights. I think I graduated with 19 people. Pretty small town, but I was fortunate to grow up within 30 miles of Mayo Clinic. And growing up there, Mayo Clinic was just the doctor. It was the hospital. Both my parents worked there. I didn't know what Mayo Clinic was. So it was an interesting journey for me to grow up in a small town on a small family farm and then eventually start my journey working for Mayo Clinic. And then at some point, really understanding what Mayo Clinic was and, what healthcare truly is. And so it was quite a journey from that small town to where I'm at now.
No, that's great. And let me first say, thank you so much for making my job so easy, because that is a fantastic segue into my first question, which was your time at Mayo Clinic spanned over 2 decades. So what are some of the foundational lessons you took from there that continue to influence your work at Luminis Health?
There's so many. Yeah, I had a career. It was 23 years at Mayo Clinic, and not a day went by in that 23 years that I didn't take something away from Mayo Clinic. I didn't learn something. But one thing that's resonated with me from the minute I heard it, and I still think of it nearly every day, is Mayo Clinic's primary value: the needs of the patient come first. It's such a simple statement with so much power that has guided my day, and it still today continues to guide my day. If you need motivation to get up and get moving, that statement has impact. If you're trying to figure out an issue, there's a disagreement on that approach, and you get stuck, that statement has impact. That gets you unstuck. That gets the team moving. It's a great intro for a new employee to Mayo Clinic. This is it. You want to understand what Mayo Clinic is about? And I would say that could extend beyond Mayo Clinic. That's healthcare. Do you know why we're in healthcare, why we do what we do? The needs of the patient come first. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to serve. And taking that away from Mayo Clinic and living that and using that to guide your work, that's been tremendous.
Oh, that is awesome. That's a great kudos to Mayo Clinic and giving you a great foundation. What originally drew you into the world of facilities management? And at what point did you know it was the right fit for you long term?
Those are two very different answers for me. What drew me into the world of facilities management, I went to a 4-year college after high school. And then when I was interviewing for positions, I just realized those positions didn't appeal to me. The entry-level positions with a business management degree, I really didn't want to do those jobs. I was 21 years old. I was lost. Now, what am I going to do? And as I was talking to family and friends about this, what am I going to do? I'm not sure what my next step is. One of my family members brought up they knew somebody that had an opening on a facilities maintenance team that he managed. But it also included, you don't want to do that because you have your 4-year business degree. And I said, oh, no, wait a second. That's pretty interesting. What is this? Again, I grew up on the small family farm. I grew up in a shop, fixing things, fabricating things, working with my hands. I've always enjoyed that. I said, now that's a job that sounds interesting. So I met with him, toured the manufacturing facility, and he said the same thing. He said, here's the job if you want it, but you don't want this. You have a 4-year business degree. I said, no, I want it. I'll take it. I'll take this job. This sounds great. So it was a job. And that's what I said. I'll take this job. It was a job. It was night shift, working weekends and things like that. But I was so fortunate to join a group of veteran maintenance technicians who understood maintenance, how to do building maintenance, how to maintain things. And they taught me, they took me under their wing and they all taught me. And I loved it. That's when I began to really develop my love of facilities maintenance, understanding why behind it. And that was great. But as I get into part 2, how did I know it was the right fit long term? As sometimes happens in manufacturing facilities, there was beginning to have some layoffs occurring. And by this point, I had a young family. I was the primary provider. I needed something stable. And I was fortunate to live near Mayo Clinic, and Mayo Clinic had some openings for maintenance technicians. So I was able to get into Mayo Clinic, and I got into Mayo Clinic for the stability. Ultimately, I don't have to worry about being laid off. Now I've got a job I can provide for my family. I learned to really love facilities management at Mayo Clinic, and particularly hospital facilities management, just due to the connection with the patient and the impact that our facilities teams and myself as a facilities technician had on our patients, our employees, our visitors, our community. And that got into my heart. It was beyond my brain. It was beyond my bank account, my paycheck getting deposited every 2 weeks. It was more than that. And it really became that during those times at Mayo Clinic.
Wow, that's a great story. And to piggyback off of that and staying right there with your education, how did pursuing your MBA impact your approach to facilities management, particularly in terms of strategic planning and leadership?
That's another thing as I reflect on that. As I was going through my MBA program, about halfway through, so we're about 9 months through, 10 months through, all of a sudden, I remember feeling a change. I could feel my outlook to life a little bit, but for sure to work, my professional outlook changing. And I could almost feel like a physical transformation in my brain from one that was more reactive, maybe confused is too strong of a word, but just really not understanding the big picture, not understanding what's happening, to one that things started to make more sense. I started to understand the organization and the whys, and I definitely started thinking more strategically. And that MBA program really helped hone that, the importance of strategic thinking. You think strategically, which generally involves planning, that reduces the amount of times you're reacting. You want to reduce the amount of times we react. And I think that's just a good way to live your life, is plan rather than react, come up with a response. And in order to have a response, you have to plan, you have to strategize and pre-think through scenarios and opportunities. So that's what that MBA program really helped me with that. The MBA program also exposed me to the different leadership mentalities as well, and let me find my leadership voice for the first time. And didn't force a voice on me, didn't force a style on me, but really taught me that difference between leadership and management and the different types of leaders. And it really showed me that my leadership style is servant leadership. And knowing that, and really began to know myself better than I had ever known myself. And that unlocked something in me going through that program.
Very nice. You've reposted several job opportunities at Luminis Health with a focus on team and culture. How do you approach building a high-performing facilities team in a healthcare setting?
The culture is incredible at Luminis Health. And in this area, in Annapolis, Baltimore, DC kind of area here, Luminis is known for that. And from my experience here, it's real. Everybody's heard about it. Everybody knows when I talk about Luminis Health, they say, hey, I heard that's a really great place to work. Yes, it's very supportive, great people. It helps me build a high-performing team. And people know that when I have a position or Luminis has a position open, and I'll focus on my department and my direct experience, but the positions I've posted and interviewed for, they're generally very high-level employees who are coming from an organization that don't have that culture. Their culture isn't supportive, and their leaders just don't have that kind of servant leadership, that collaborative mindset. And I've hired some very talented people that have left a situation that didn't have a strong culture and are coming to bring their skills to an organization that does have that culture. And my job is to make sure that they fit in that and that they understand that, and they also have some stewardship of that culture once they join the organization. Every new person that joins, you don't just join, you become part of it, and you hold some of that responsibility now to maintain that culture or even advance that incredible culture.
Got it. And speaking of culture, Nick, could you maybe share a story where culture made the difference in the outcome of a facilities-related challenge that you may have had?
One comes to mind. I was with Luminis. I was with the organization about 6 months. I'm over multiple hospitals. I was brand new. I didn't know anybody when I started. So 6 months to get my feet under me and start to understand the people as well as the infrastructure and all this. We had one hospital steam generator that served the operating rooms had failed when I started. So one of the first things I did is pick this up. How do we get this steam generator replaced before we need it in the winter to keep our humidity levels in the operating rooms within range? So I started the project. Again, what a way to get to know people when you're asking them for a bunch of money and getting to know engineers and getting to know team members as you're trying to design, and contractors, vendors to get something installed. So it was a lot of just getting to know people. So this was going, and there was a lot of reasons led up to the problem, but we did have a lot of snow for our area. I was told this region didn't get much snow, which appealed to me coming from Minnesota. And of course, our first snowfall that we get was like a foot of snow. It was pretty incredible. So we're dealing with a lot of things. The steam generator was brought in, the old one was removed, the new one was put in. People were working on it. My team looked away for a little bit. We got busy with other things. All of a sudden, one day, the operating room called and said, our humidity levels are dramatically low. What's going on? Can you let us know what's happening? We looked. Yeah, they were all out of range. And it was right at shift change. It was 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the afternoon on a Friday. So I'm holding everybody back as much as I can. We all said it has to be that steam generator. Something's wrong. One of my technicians went up there. It never got hooked up.
Oh, wow.
It was close, but it never got finished. And it sat there for a few weeks. It didn't get fired up. It didn't get done. And again, it's our fault. It flat out is. If you're going to blame somebody, blame me. That's my project. That's my steam generator. I took my eye off it and it didn't get done. Okay. So I had part of my team get to work. How can we get someone to campus to get this started up? We need to get it started up. We have surgeries to get done. And I called one of our people in leadership and I said, we need incident command. This is not good. Here's the situation. We need to figure this out. I got into incident command awaiting blame. How could you do this? Why did you let this happen? I can't believe you did this. Something like that. That's a natural response to something like this. And it's a serious, there's a lot of emotions. They're running high. A lot of people were put into some very stressful situations because of this. That didn't happen. Not once. Instead, it was replaced with, how can we help? I know you've had a ton going on. I understand. We're here to help. How can we work through this? Everybody was so supportive at Luminis Health. So supportive and encouraging. And folks that really didn't have any direct involvement with this. I was getting text messages. Is there something I can do to help? I know I can't help you, but I believe in you. You've got this. It turned a really stressful, really difficult situation into one that was manageable. And it felt like it wasn't, myself and my team. There was no spotlight on us. Everybody was doing their role to minimize the impact on the patient during this time and the families and things that were being affected by this. And that let me just really focus with my team. Let's get this up and running. How do we get it up and running? Let's get it going. So that's something I'll never forget, is that feeling. And then again, just everybody coming together in a supportive way and getting it figured out. I think 2.5 hours later, we had it fired up and running and we were back to normal.
Wow, that's awesome. That really is. And I just want to say that self-accountability is definitely a must-have character trait for a great leader. And so it sounds like you've at least checked that box. In your current role as director of facilities, how do you balance day-to-day operations with fostering innovation and long-term growth?
Great question. And I will say that's probably one of the biggest challenges I face. And part of it is because I like the day-to-day work that my teams do. I enjoy that part of it a lot. And so myself, I should have a real high level view, but I enjoy that work. Some of my colleagues and my mentors will say this, that I very easily get pulled into the day-to-day. It's because I like it and I'm working on that. But generally how I deal with this is it's how I structure my teams and set expectations on each level of my facility structure. I structured that my engineers and technicians, along with my supervisors, are really responsible for the day-to-day operations of my hospital facilities. That's their role and that's their focus. And I'd like to keep my engineers and my technicians as much as possible to that day-to-day, maybe up to the work week. Try to focus on that. Keep your focus there. And then my supervisors are looking at the work week up to maybe the end of the month, beginning of the next month. So about a month view, maybe on the supervisor level. And they're there. And then they know when there's something that's starting to get out of that work week. If there's a problem and we can fix it in a day, at most I should be communicated with it if it's impacting the organization. But I shouldn't be involved in it. That's something that, that's your job and you figure it out. And there's going to be days that's going to be really hard, but that's the expectation and that's the level. My manager level then that I have up above, I generally have my manager level looking about it that 1 month out to maybe up to 6 months, 8 months out, and looking at that kind of strategy and innovation at that level. And generally, I'm looking from that 6 months out to maybe a year or two into the future. And I'm trying to set that stage for my manager as I'm looking at innovation. I'm bringing in new vendors, finding new technologies and exploring it. And then there's always that gray area. There is an overlap and purposeful overlap between each of those levels and roles. And then that facilitates communication, conversation, collaboration. There might be something out there somebody else finds and they give to me that I explore and it looks viable. Now I bring it back. And then we do that. And innovation can come from anywhere. And if it's a quick innovation, then generally my technicians and supervisors are empowered to do that. Just do it.
Oh, okay. Got it. So, Nick, with decades of experience, how have you seen technology change the game in healthcare facilities management? And what kind of excites you most about the next wave of innovation, since we're on the topic of innovation?
You're making me feel old, Steve, a little bit when I'm talking about this, but it has changed tremendously. And in just my career, I've gone from the paper tickets, two-way radios to now everything electronic, no paper whatsoever. I went from hand tools, a shared multimeter because they were so expensive, not everyone could have their own, to now every technician can have their own thermal camera on their toolkit. Every technician can have a borescope that plugs into their iPad and keep it on their cart. And technology has jumped that far. I remember Mayo Clinic buying their first thermal camera, and it was news when they bought that. It was huge. It was kept locked in someone's office. You couldn't really touch it. You got to see it, but you couldn't hold it or anything. And now, yeah, anybody that wants one can have one. They're common. And by doing that, you bring that technology and you can apply it to maintenance. I'm not just looking at a motor anymore. We're not just looking at a panel. Now we're actually investigating deeper than our eyes can see. We're not feeling it with our hand and kind of guessing, we're seeing it. We have true data now rather than gut feels and experience. I'd say number one, technology has helped level the playing field a little bit, which is great with the experience that we have leaving the field, retiring and moving on. And we're bringing in a little more inexperienced talent sometimes. They don't have the experience, but a lot of our new folks are really good at using technology. And when we provide that, teach them how to use it and then how to use that data from it, that's been tremendous. And I tell you, right now, I don't know what we would do without it.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's great. Another thing that kind of crossed my mind with the economy being what it is right now, it's on everybody's mind. So you want to be very cautious, very careful about the spending that you do, very impactful. And with that, I noticed that you've managed budgets in the tens of millions and overseeing capital projects. What's your approach to prioritizing spending while still being able to ensure safety and compliance?
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's a challenge. Budgets are a challenge to every hospital facilities manager that I know. That's a continual conversation. Generally, how I lead the conversation is the hospital dictates some level of investment from facilities. Compliance is one thing. Compliance is not optional. So what it takes to become compliant for the various organizations that the hospital, as far as accreditation and safety and codes and things like that, really all we can do there is try to manage the cost. Can we do something in-house rather than contracting it out? Is there a technology that can replace the manual checks that we're doing now, things like that? So that's how I set my baseline. What is the cost of compliance to the various organizations for the hospital? And that's a big number. It's outsourcing. There's some things that are really difficult to do in-house. So there's definitely contracts and contractors involved. When you have contracts and contractors, they're not self-managed. So you need to somehow have staff available to manage them. And then your in-house staff, how efficient can you be with your in-house staff doing these checks? Because generally a large number of PMs, the volume is compliance. And so how can we streamline that? Can we focus on that and improve routing? Is there technology? What shift are we doing it on? Who's doing it? What skill level is doing that? Do I have my master electrician doing something that a 2-week into the job maintenance tech could be doing? Things like that. Let's just analyze who's doing what. And then as far as the rest of the budget, it's a true relationship with the leaders of the organization to try to have a plan to not surprise people. The better we can do to not surprise folks with big bills, with failed infrastructure equipment, with things like that, if we can plan this out and really have that level of trust back and forth. This truly is an issue that could impact the hospital. And also, I don't like to present problems. You can bring up the potential issue or the problem and then try to present several solutions to the problem. I've seen that most of the time in what we do, there's very seldom one solution. There's several. And what is the best solution? Sometimes you're not able to afford the best solution all the time. And so you talk through that with the decision makers. Where are we at on overall budget? What's available? Here's my counsel on each of these options. This one will get us by for a few months. This one will probably last 5 years. This one will last 20 years and use less energy, but it costs double. What do we want to do? I can execute any of the three. Here's the timeline. And we talk through that. So it's really a team. And maybe I'm passing the buck a little bit, but I'm saying like ultimately the budget's not just me. I have a lot to do with it, but it is ultimately a team, and it's my whole facilities team. And in my teams, we talk openly about the budget. And if someone has a question, if someone's wondering, we're always there to talk about it. Where are we at? What can we do better? And I'm always open for input on it as well. So that really makes a difference, is just to be open and honest about it.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds like it. Now, I want to ask you a question. Moments ago when we were talking, you made the comment that made you feel old, which is hilarious to me because you're like 19. And I say that because people will see you and they'll see I'm this old, bald sales guy sitting here talking to this young whippersnapper. If you could give advice to your younger self starting out as a facilities operations specialist, what would it be? And what do you hope to be remembered for in this field?
Oh, that's a great question. So I remember starting my first day at Mayo Clinic, and you start at the bottom. I started at the bottom, and you don't start much further at the bottom than sweeping parking ramps. And that was half my job. That was part of my job every night. New guy, you run the sweeper through the parking ramps on evening shift. So it was 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, sitting in a sweeper, sweeping parking ramps. And I knew where I wanted to go, what position I wanted to hold at Mayo Clinic. I knew the position, and I had no idea how to get there. Or if I could, I didn't know, but I knew where I wanted to go. And I think along that way, I had a lot of doubts if that was going to happen, but I held fast to that. I didn't communicate it. I wasn't confident enough in myself to actually tell anybody that, but that was my goal. And it took me 15 years of working really hard every day, but I made it. And so I would just tell myself that it is possible. It's there, it's possible, and there's a path. I had to figure out the path the whole way, how to get there, but I did it. And I think that was just a great sense of accomplishment personally and professionally for me to do that. And I remember when I got offered the position that I tried to achieve, I would probably tell myself at that time, that's one of the best jobs you'll ever have. Yep. Sitting in a sweeper, listening to the radio, instant gratification. It's cleaner now than when you started, and take a lot of pride in it. The patients see that first thing in the morning. Why are you doing this? Why is it this important? And don't minimize it ever. This is an important job. It feels like it's not, but it is. It's very important.
That's right. The importance of aesthetics to be understated. So I guess the final question I'd have for you, Nick, and of course, goal with this podcast is to educate and inspire. So if someone wanted to get into facilities management leadership, how would they go about it?
That's something I've spent a lot of time thinking about over this past year. I've had a number of people ask me that. And when they first asked me that, I didn't know how to answer them. I'd say right now, the path is pretty gray on how to get there. And I think if you ask a lot of people in my position, we'd have a hard time answering that. And I think a lot of our paths are all a little bit different. My advice to somebody is, number one, are you sure? And my second question is why? Why would you want to do this? If the answer is the paycheck, it's probably not for you. If the answer is I want to control things, I want full control over something, I think it's probably not for you either. I think if you're looking to increase the level of service that you can have to the hospital, to facilities, I think if that's the mindset that you have, that you really think you can have greater influence, positive influence over your technicians and your team by rising to this level, then I think that person has that right mindset. And I think that's really what it takes. And so I would highly recommend somebody with that mindset, no matter where they're at on the journey, to find a mentor. Find somebody they trust and to find a mentor. That helps a lot. And that has been a big benefit to me. I've had several people help me along the way get to where I am. I would have never got here on my own. And people that you can have those frank conversations with. I'm frustrated. I think I should be ready for the next level. And somebody to say, no, you're not. Here's some things I would suggest you work on. I'm seeing this, and here's what I would suggest to help get there. That helps so much. So as you go up the ladder in facilities leadership, there's a period of growth that occurs at each step. And that takes time. You have to be put in scenarios sometimes to experience that growth. Sometimes they don't happen very often. So you have to do this for a while, and you have to go through some struggles. You be around the right people, and then have those right people in your lives to encourage you to take that next step and support you as you go through those various steps to rise in leadership.
Got it. Wow. I tell you what, I'm excited. I'm ready to go into facilities management. Why? Because of Nick Queensland. Nick, has been fantastic. Again, I thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to sit here and talk with an old ball sales guy and to tell our audience about your journey into facilities management. thank you so much for doing so. And maybe we'll do this again sometime.
I'd love that. That sounds great.